Hi folks, today we're going to continue our study of church history and the pioneers going west. I'm so grateful for you all to be here today. I'd remind you to pay attention to goldengemsradio.net and listen to those broadcasts as well. Today we're going to study the Mormon Battalion, the Mississippi Saints, the Brooklyn, and the Advance Company. While the Advance Company traveled west, roughly half the Saints in winter quarters were outfitting wagons and packing provisions for their journey. In the evenings, after finishing their preparations, they often gathered together to sing and to dance, to fiddle music, and on Sundays they met to hear sermons and talk about their coming trek. Sam Brannan and his companions walked into camp just before sunset, surprising everyone. The company listened rapidly as Sam entertained them with stories of the Brooklyn, the founding of New Hope, and his own perilous journeys across mountain plains to find them. He told them that the saints in California had planted acres of wheat and potatoes to prepare for their arrival. Sam's enthusiasm for the climate and soil of California was infectious. Brigham Young listened to Sam, quietly skeptical of the proposal. The allure of the California coast was beyond question, but Brigham knew the Lord wanted the saints to establish a new gathering place closer to the Rocky Mountains. Our destination is the Great Basin, he said. Just over a week later, the company turned off the well-beaten trail, even following to take another, fainter trail south to the Salt Lake Valley. As members of the Advance Company headed into the heart of the Rocky Mountains, the trail was steeper, and the men and women tired more easily. Ahead of them, clearly visible above the rolling plains, were snow-capped peaks, much taller than any mountain they had seen in the eastern United States. On the 21st of July, the brethren caught their first glimpses of the Salt Lake Valley. Brigham Young had become quite deathly ill of mountain fever, and the company had been divided into three groups: the vanguard, the main body, and the rear guard with the ill Brigham Young. The vanguard company arrived in Valley on the 22nd of July, 1847. They returned for the ailing Brigham Young. When they first saw the valley, he was enwrapped in vision and said, "It is enough. This is the right place." Brigham had recognized the spot as soon as he saw it. At the north of the valley was the mountain peak from his vision. Brigham had prayed to be led directly to that place. The Lord had answered his prayers. He saw no need to look elsewhere. The difficult thing at this time, my friends, was that Sam Brannan, who had established himself in California, really did have a better place prepared for the saints. It was more fertile, it grew better, and the climate was better. But Sam Brannan wasn't the right leader for the saints. Brigham Young was. And as the saints rejected the chance to go to California and settle instead in the Rocky Mountains, it was a difficult task for them to take. But the fact of the matter is they followed the prophet, and that's where we can get inspiration. Following the prophet is often the most difficult thing to do. It often requires us to work harder, to give up more, and to sacrifice. But if we'll do that, we'll be blessed. In this case, everything looked like Sam Brannan's place was the better place to look at on the surface. But in reality, Sam Brannan ends up leaving the church and dies penniless, while Brigham Young, on the other hand, leads the saints to the Rocky Mountains and they work hard and they toil and they suffer for years. But here we are today because of it. It's a great lesson we can learn from this particular period in church history. On the morning of July 26th, Brigham Young was still giving a blessing in Wilford's carriage when he returned to Wilford and said, "Brother Wilford, I went to take a walk." Brigham rode in Wilford's carriage part of the way, his hands clutching a green cloak around his shoulders. As the man followed Brigham, admiring the land, he stopped suddenly and touched his cane to the ground. "Here shall stand the temple of our God," he said. "Now this temple will not be built for four persons of the church. Brigham Young doesn't see it, neither does John Taylor. Overruled ends up dedicating it. It takes 40 years to build. He can already see a vision of it in front of the valley, its 6 spires rising up from the valley floor. They had originally planned on building the 6 spires out of wood, but later it was determined that they should be built of granite. The men were about to walk on, Wilford asked them to wait. He broke off a branch from a rusty dresser to the ground, marked the spot. The men then continued on, envisioning the saints would build in the valley. Now this kind of faith, my friends, would have required all that the brethren had. They couldn't see anything, they just were envisioning it. Although we have the same spiritual gifts and spiritual power today to see things as they should be and not the way that they really are, I think we'd see things quite differently if we could do that. Brigham Young remained in the valley only 33 days before they left to return to winter quarters. John Smith was appointed the president of the Salt Lake. He met with other groups of saints in our winter quarters, 1,553 of them. They arrived in Cage on the 31st of October, 1847. Of course, that year it wasn't Halloween yet, even though it's Halloween today. On November 30th, Brigham Young finally spoke to the quorum about the organizing the first presidency. Certain there was laws moving forward. Orson Pratt immediately began to question the need for the change. "I'd like to see the 12 hold together perfectly in there," he said. Orson believed that the 12 could lead the church in the absence of a first presidency, because the Revelation had declared the two parties to be equal in authority. The prophet Joseph Smith had also taught that a majority of the 12 could make authoritative decisions when a full quorum was not present. Brigham listened to Orson, but he disagreed with his conclusion. "Which is better?" Brigham asked. "To unite the 12, let them go to the nations, or else keep 7 at home." "Here's my feeling," said Orson. There should not be a 3-man member for presidency, and the 12 should be the first presidency. At this time, the women of the church continued together informally. Elizabeth and Emily analyzed our snow. Former members of the novels really study Outlandish brothers as well as young women and little girls. As they then went across the women and spiritual gifts and strength of one another. Hubert Kimball and Orson agreed that it was time to reorganize the first presidency. But Orson Pratt once again expressed concern. He worried that the first presidency would not seek the advice of the quorum of the 12. The 12 might also prefer to lead to the president's authority, accepting his decisions and thinking to matters themselves. The church is functioning well enough under the 12, he reasoned. Why change now? Finally, Orson Pratt was convinced that they needed a first presidency, so the 12 would go to the world. Orson had moved to Brigham Young ordering the new president, and he chose William seeking Mormon Village as his counselors. Later, in general comments, the sage unanimously sustained the new presidency. Brigham Young, replacing Joseph Smith as the president of the church, was not a foregone conclusion. Although he is undeniably universally acknowledged as the leader of the 12, even in general, there are several compelling counter-arguments to reorganizing the first presidency. First and foremost, evidence indicates that Joseph desired his son, Joseph III, to assume into leadership of the church. While the members of the 12 were unanimous testimony that Joseph had charged them to protect the kingdom and given them the keys to do so, they understood that apostolic charge, while remembering the blessing young Joseph had received from his father when he was only 11 years old, appointing him as his successor. They therefore wondered if their charge to the church had been a temporary one. Realizing that young Joseph's claim to the presidency was based on his faithfulness, and after making an impossible attempt to persuade Emma and her sons to join the Saints West, and in consequence of their adamant refusal, some thought perhaps the 12 as a body should continue to lead the church without reorganizing the first presidency. Despite these opposing arguments, reorganizing the first presidency was the only alternative that made sense or seemed to follow the revelatory president. The 12 needed abroad, and the Savior needed to help them. Reorganizing the first presidency provided the stability as the scriptures indicated. See D&C 16, 15 to 22, 107, 33, 112, 26 to 27, 112, 20, 30, 117, 13, 120 verse 1, 124 verse 26, which all claim that there needs to be a first presidency of the church, the Brigham Young should be the president of the church. The emergence of the principle of apostolic succession to the presidency is the single most important development during this time period. We see one more time. The emergence of the principle of apostolic succession to the presidency is the single most important development during this time period. What happened in relative obscurity in the King's will of Kevin in 1847 is there is a president that continues to dictate the letters in ecclesiastical government to this day. Chronology of the other groups. So the Mormon Battalion, the 200 quarters on July 21st, 1846. The Irrigation Mission San Diego, January 29th, 1847. Registered in January 16th, 1847. Most quarters of Frugality in the summer of 1848. The Brooklyn Saints. New York on the 4th of February 1846, and Rome, San Francisco on July 31st, 1846. Sam Brand traveled east in April 1847 and met in Green River. He left the church in Savannah and met Moscow Salt Lake. The Mississippi Saints traveled to Independence, Missouri. They went to Chimney Rock on July 1846. Traveled to Fort Laramie, winter in Pueblo, where they met 360 times of Mississippi Saints. They traveled in July 1847. The following is a summary of the 7 principles of managed that became known as the Utah Territory was established. The map realized that the Utah Territory was very big. It encompassed all the state of Utah, Nevada, most Arizona, and part of California, little pieces of Oregon, and Wyoming, Colorado, and Mexico. This system was for one, the gathering. The pure in heart were counseled together at Babylon to a place called Zion. The church still believes in a little gathering of Israel for the elect, and the elect to my voice. The promulgation of this doctrine led to the development of a large and effective missionary program, which included, in the 19th century, immigrating to the Great Basin to be with and help the saints. So the first principle is the gathering. The second principle is called the Mormon Village. We don't live this principle anymore, but they did back then, throughout the 19th century. Once gathered, the sanctuaries were to be settled, as suggested in the Plat of the city of Zion, in New York villages, consisting of a cluster of homes. and lots laid out in 4 squares with the world, with white streets intersecting at right angles. This concept was used with almost every community in the territory and provided people peculiarly adapted to the conditions required for colonizing the Great Basin. It provided protection against the Indians, but members in close proximity with each other and their leaders. By separating the residence area from agricultural lands, made possible more advantageous utilization of space. If you grew up in Utah, you probably don't realize it was that way. It was different anywhere else. But if you go to the Midwest, the farm's in the center, and the land is around the farm. The land is around the farmhouse. But if you go to Utah, the houses are in the center of town, and the farmlands are out where the farmlands with that house is in it. This is the way the saints lived and was received by revelation. Property and stewardship. Property rights were allocated and regulated by church leaders, assuring group interests over individual interest. Every man consecrating his all to the Lord and the building of his kingdom. So you didn't own land, you received land as a stewardship, and then you used it to build the kingdom. 4. Redeeming the earth. After settling the villages and distributing stewardships, the saints were to proceed with the orderly development of local resources. This was a sacred work regarded as religious, not merely a secular function. They said this work as preparatory to the millennial reign. Man must assist God in causing the desert to blossom as a rose, returning the earth again into a paradise of divine meaning. Irrigation as much as part of the religion as water baptism. This is a part of the plan that I wish we were still living, but we're not. The saints saw their work on the land as with the work of the Lord. They saw missionary work and work on the land as equally important. They were preparing the earth for the Savior's second coming. 5. Frugality and Economic Independence. The goal of colonization was complete regional economic independence. Members of the church were asked to manufacture their own iron, produce their own cotton, spin their own silk, and grind their own grain. They must do this without borrowing from the outsiders. They believe God had blessed each region with all the resources necessary to do so. What's interesting is, as you look at Utah, it's very dry. It's a desert. Yet they saw themselves saving all the elements they needed to create a design-like community, including prosperity, unity, and cooperation. The one quality necessary for this economic system to succeed was unity. This meant the participants in the sublime task of building the kingdom of God were to submit themselves to the direction of God's leaders and display a spirit of willing cooperation. Cooperation meant that every man's labor was subject to the call from church authorities, as well as and was supervised by them as well. This would require a great amount of humility and a great amount of desire to be unified and cooperative. This is why the system failed with us, because we failed in the aspect of unity and cooperation. We were not willing to let leaders tell us what to do, and we were not willing to cooperate with those around us. 7. Equality. The success of this economic program rested on the justice of distribution. This doctrine was based on revelation which stated, quote, if you're unequal in earthly things, you cannot be equal in between heavenly things. The core of this policy was reflected in systems of immigration, construction of public works, the allotment of land and water, the many cooperative villages, stores, and industries. My friends, it's difficult not to say, but we've come a long ways away from this. We're now very much each man for himself, for ourselves and for those around us. I bear testimony that this was inspired by the Lord, and is what He wanted it done. And when we approach the millennium, as we enter the millennium, we'll do this again. But for now, we're not doing it, which is hard for me. It's a difficult thing for me to see. The saints did it then without being down in the temple. We don't do it now, having been down in the temple. It's a difficult thing for me to see. I hope and pray that as we read through this and we study this, we'll realize that there is a better way to live, a more unified way, a more consecrated way. I say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.